But we're not looking at the same Ben Roethlisberger from years past, and it visibly shows. So, I mean, Kyle, 1-3. We're just in the playoffs last year. What is going on in Pittsburgh? And I'm assuming that they are definitely in panic mode.
I wouldn't say outright panic, but the level of concern is definitely rising. So I always kind of look at it like this. The first 4 seasons, not the first 4 seasons, the first 4 weeks of the season, I think is by and large an extension of the preseason. Teams are still trying to figure out personnel and putting those personnel pieces in the proper groupings. And we're 4 games in, and we're going into the month of October. But the Steelers' offense just looks so awful. I mean, granted, they looked a little bit better this week than they did last week, but Ben looks like he's done. I'm just going to outright say it. He just doesn't have it anymore. And when you look at this offensive performance in particular, granted, Ben threw for about 220, 225 yards in this game. But the biggest stat to me is, dude, they did not run the football. They had 62 yards of rush offense from Najee Harris and maybe some backup running backs.
Now,
this team is so one-dimensional. Defenses just know how to scheme against them because they know that, by and large, 60 to 70% of the plays that Pittsburgh's going to run are going to be pass plays. And until Pittsburgh makes an adjustment to where they run the ball more effectively and they actually make an effort to do so, this team is going to not only struggle, they're going to struggle mightily. Granted, they did win that week 1 matchup against the Bills, and even that win was ugly. But these last 3 games, they have looked dude, they are just tough to watch right now. And just to kind of put it on the flip side here, Green Bay looks like they're world beaters. After taking that week 1 loss by 35 points against the Saints, they flipped the script. They're on a 3-game win streak. Aaron Rodgers is lighting it up. His connection with Devontae Adams and his wideouts, they've been on point. They're getting good run production as well. And they look like they're going to be a real good threat to contend with in the NFC. And it's just kind of like, it's just really like the antithesis of what the Steelers are. The Packers are doing great, and the Steelers look like hell. So, granted, there are still 13 games left in the season. There's a lot of time left for Pittsburgh to make up this ground. But, dude, they're in a division with 3 teams ahead of them that are at 3-1. The Bengals are 3-1, the Ravens are 3-1, and the Browns are 3-1.
Such a weird way to put it when you say that out loud.
The Steelers need to get it together. Granted, they got to turn up the urgency, and they got to do it quick, because if they don't, they could be in a situation where they're going to be not only sub 500, they could be looking at like a top 5, top 10 draft pick if they can't get this right. Because the defense, I'm still of the mindset, is very good, but not when the offense is doing BS like this. This is squarely on the offense. And if they can't fix this, dude, they're in real trouble. I'll give them maybe another week or 2 before I go into panic mode with them. But right now, yeah, my level of concern with the Steelers is rising, and they need to do something quick to kind of stem the tide of that.
So here's my thing with Pittsburgh, and here's why I say they are in panic mode, right? They don't have an option outside of Ben. You already saw what Mason Rudolph is going to put out there. You know what you're going to get from Dwayne Haskins. Dobbs, whatever his name is, from Tennessee.
Joshua Dobbs.
Again, not anybody that has true NFL experience. But when you really look at the QB depth chart in Pittsburgh, you know that Ben sadly is your best option. And this is not a good option. So I apologize. My dog is currently finding many ways to frustrate the hell out of me and chewing a toy right on my chair. But yeah, so I'm in panic mode because you know what you have with Ben. You're not winning football games. Your defense is single-handedly keeping you in most of these games because in my opinion, this game could have been a shit ton worse if their defense wasn't as good as they are. Because they had 3 sacks on Aaron Rodgers. They were able to hold Aaron Rodgers in certain settings, and they kept Pittsburgh within a 10-point game. I mean, for God's sakes, once again, Najee Harris was at the top of the targets list. Deontay Johnson had 13 targets. Juju Smith-Schuster had 8, and then Najee had 7. Ben Roethlisberger has a QBR of 43.7 in this game. He threw the ball for an average of 5.8 yards per attempt. That is atrocious. You're either living through the check down or you're living through the slants and the ins and or outs. But the point of the matter is, Ben can't move the ball. Ben can't move his feet. And the offensive line is atrocious. Like Kyle said also, 3.9 yards per carry, 62 total rushing yards, 16 total attempts, 15 of them by Najee. Dude, Pittsburgh has no idea what it is that they're doing. The only consistency is that defense, but you are going to absolutely burn them out if the offense can't put points on the board and capitalize on some of these opportunities. If I get my offense the ball several times and they're not able to put up any points or a lackluster amount of points, I mean, for God's sakes, Pitt started the game 7-0. They held Aaron Rodgers to 0 points, and then Aaron Rodgers turned it on and obviously scored 27 in the freaking second and third quarter together because Green Bay didn't score in the fourth, which again shows, to my point, Pitt's defense is legitimately carrying them into the games that they have and keeping them as close as they are because offensively, Mike Tomlin and that team just cannot get anything together. And when you're unable to run the football, you don't have a backup plan, and you can't consistently throw the ball and put it in the air like you're used to. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger is known for his big body and being able to rotate and get out of sacks and like kind of like extend plays. But if you can't put the ball down the field, which is what you're literally known for the majority of your career, I think that is absolutely insane. And I think that Pittsburgh needs to go to the drawing board and figure out if playing Ben Roethlisberger for the rest of the year is going to bode well for them. I mean, he's averaging like over 35 attempts per game. Another game where he's thrown the ball 40 plus times. So if you want him to make it to the end of the season, I think you really need to incorporate a run game, or you need to make a move by the trade deadline or in this coming free agency or the draft and redraft that offensive line. 1-3, disgusting. And the fact that everybody in your division is 3-1, including the Bengals, who have been the butt of the division for the last, 5 years, doesn't bode well for Pittsburgh. And I don't know if it's going to get any better because it doesn't look like Pittsburgh's willing to change anything because they've been doing the same thing for the last 4 weeks.
It starts up front for me. I remember we were talking a little bit about the Dallas Cowboys in one of our previous segments just a couple minutes ago. And we were talking about just how physically dominant they were against the Carolina Panthers in that Week 4 matchup. When I look at what the Steelers have offensively for their O-line, bro, it sucks. That's why they're not running the ball. They just have no confidence because I think it's kind of a well-known fact that their offensive line really has struggled. And they are one of the more weaker offensive lines that a team is able to field this year. So that kind of leaves yourself in a situation where you're just entirely dependent on Big Ben to kind of carry you. But the fact of the matter is, it just leaves your offense so one-dimensional, and Ben can't do it like that anymore. He can't carry this team like he used to, like a decade plus, or 5 years ago. Just can't do it anymore. Granted, you look at somebody like the Buffalo Bills and how much they rely on Josh Allen. They're throwing the ball at least 60 to 70% of the time. But Josh Allen is in his 20s. He hasn't accrued the time and the tenure that Big Ben has. And I just think that, bro, the hits on Ben, they're adding up. And I think at this point, I'm going to kind of agree with you to a certain extent. I don't know if he's going to be able to get through the season. I think what's eventually going to happen, and God forbid this happens to him, I just think it's going to be one hit, and that might be it. We saw it with Drew Brees last year. Drew Brees took one hit and he cracked 12 ribs. And I am not praying for Big Ben to get
No,
hurt.
no, no, not at all. No, no.
I
You're
am not
making a
saying
point.
that.
It's the truth, though. It genuinely
It's just
is.
the game is still violent. I know they still protect the quarterback, but these hits, they just add up. And all it takes is one. It's all it takes. And
Dude, Ben has had
with how brittle he is right now, it may not take much.
Ben has had a really good offensive line for the majority of his career, right? Ben
Mhm.
has also been a durable quarterback in terms of playing through injuries. Like I said in our last episode, take it from someone who's had a shitty offensive line up until the last recent two or 3 years since we've drafted Quentin Nelson.
Mhm.
Bro, that ruins careers. That ends careers. Andrew Luck is a prime example, and I know Andrew is a whole lot younger and it's a whole different situation. But if you're consistently relying on his arm to bail you out of situations to make up for the lack of an offensive line,
Mhm.
you're going to get your quarterback injured. You're going to lose football games. And it's not a formula for success, bro. You can't run the ball. You're not going to win a football game. You're not going to continue. I mean, for God's sakes, TJ Watt just signed this massive deal. And he's now stuck in Pittsburgh because he knows that literally he is the only reason amongst other players on that side of the ball that is keeping this offense together. And they just can't get it going. And I think Mike Tomlin low key might be on the hot seat if they continue to lose because this is on him in the front office for making this exception. I mean, giving Ben what, $15 million to come back this year? Big steep. Financially, you guys weren't really in a place where you could afford that. I mean, you signed Dwayne Haskins this offseason too, but ooh, like that. What was that going to do?
Is Dwayne Haskins really your guy of the future?
No. And if you were worried, right? If you knew that Ben was owed a certain amount of money this season, and you came to a point where you were able to cut that a total in half, you should have diverted those funds to either building an offensive line, getting a piece. There are plenty of offensive linemen available this free agency, or you go out there and you pay a backup quarterback, a good backup quarterback, somebody that we know that has experience, that has been successful with that experience. Not Mason Rudolph being absolute dog shit last season, not Dwayne Haskins, who absolutely pissed away his career in Washington and the way he was acting and his irresponsibility and his lack of performance with being a top lottery pick. Your quarterback room is absolutely horrible. And then your star player, one of your best franchise players in history, is damn near 58 years old, but you want him to go out there and put up 25, 30 points a game. It's not a formula for success, and I think Mike Tomlin in the front office is solely responsible.